Hey you, how's your day? Oh, whoa, that sounds rough. But listen, you're home now. Snuggle up. This is the Cashmere Couch. Today we will be talking about something so raw, so real, so tender that it could actually feel like we're peeling back a layer of our souls. Today we will be talking about the unglamorous side of motherhood, and I feel like it is very important for this to be discussed. I feel like this is something that should be normalized because no one talks about it. They glaze over these things on social media. They omit this from baby books. Every resource that you have out there are some things about motherhood they don't talk about, and therefore you're not prepared for it. And because no one talks about these things, you don't expect them to happen. You expect the opposite: perfection in motherhood. Motherhood is an experience that changes from mother to mother, that differs from your first pregnancy to the next. Motherhood is not something that you can prep for, but at the same time, when you go in completely clueless about certain things, you expect them not to happen. And these expectations, which honestly sometimes can be really unrealistic, lead to disappointments. And the thing about motherhood is that disappointments in motherhood don't just sting, they spiral. And they look like guilt, shame, silence, and eventually sometimes depression. So let's try and normalize this. Let's try discussing some myths that I personally find to be over romanticized about motherhood. You know this one? You're pregnant, you're glowing, or you're trying to. I was a whale for both my pregnancies, and I had people coming in telling me that I was glowing, but I couldn't see it. And you're scrolling through social media, Pinterest boards especially, right? Looking for the perfect nursery, looking at people posting about their baby bumps. It's all really pretty and beautiful, and you're excited to get into the game. What is a perfect nursery? Let's talk about that for a second, shall we? The perfect nursery today is a palette of rose, blush, and nudes, if it's a girl. Oh, we also have gender neutral colors now, and they're all about beiges and whites, and you have everything to match. One word: aesthetic. Motherhood is presented as something almost divine in this soft light, this glow. It's almost like motherhood is this unicorn, this mystical, magical unicorn. And sometimes you can't really see that unicorn properly because the lights, they're just blinding. And to be honest, yes, it can be sometimes beautiful. You know how when people say it's so beautiful that it makes everything else worth it? It's that everything else that I want to talk about. It's that everything else that they don't show you. Most days, motherhood doesn't look like that. It looks instead like a horse, a stinky horse. And when I say stinky, I mean physically. Motherhood smells, and it smells like milk and body odor, which also smells like milk and sweat. And it smells like unwashed hair with milk. Motherhood can be noisy. It's not as peaceful and serene as you tend to see Instagram showing it to be. Social media, even with the best of intentions, can show everything but the chaos. In fact, I feel that social media tends to romanticize that chaos. When you see things that are posed as problems of motherhood or the downsides to motherhood, the feeling of being completely exhausted, the feeling of not having enough for yourself, these things are posted as laughable moments. I get that they're trying to be relatable, and I get that they're trying to make light of the situation because people are already feeling very low about these things. But because the situation is made light of, people don't understand the seriousness behind it. Especially people who are just coming into it and then they're slapped with reality. You look at sleepy newborns, peaceful, beautiful, serene. You don't see the crusty nipples behind that sleep. You see co-sleeping, cuddling, but you don't look at the 3 a.m. pacing, which leads to that beautiful picture or post. I think it's important to understand that motherhood is a balance. You shouldn't get so scared to the point that you don't want to come into it, but at the same time, we shouldn't be romanticizing these notions to a point where people don't understand what they are getting themselves into completely. It's not about preparing yourself. I think I mentioned this before. Motherhood is not something that you can completely prepare yourself for. I study all of these and I can ace the test. Motherhood is not a test. It is an experience. And when you go into an experience, you need to be able to accept that that experience or that situation can go both ways. When your reality fails to meet your expectations, when your expectations don't match the experiences that you're having, then that makes you wonder. Your guilt creeps in and questions you. Am I doing something wrong? That's when we have a problem. One of the most dangerous myths, in my opinion, and I say this with love, okay, is that instantaneous connection that you're supposed to feel when your baby comes. So we see a lot of birth stories being posted on social media where you see visuals of mothers instantly crying at the sight or even the sound of their newborn. As soon as the baby comes out, all slippery and bloody, mothers are trying to hold the baby skin to skin, right? And they start crying and they kiss the baby all over. It happens with fathers as well. That doesn't happen all the time. I had a 42-hour labor, and trust me, that's not the worst story I've heard. I had a 42-hour labor and I was at the point of exhaustion when the baby came. There is no other word that I can think of to explain how incredibly tired I was. And so I was not having any form of emotional connection with the baby. I remember when she actually came out, I looked at my husband and said, "Baby." And the reason for that was because at that point of exhaustion, the first thing I remember thinking when she came out, when she slid out with all the warmth and liquid, it was warm liquid, with all the warmth and the liquid, was that I just had a rubber chicken slide out of my vagina. That was the first and only thought I had until I saw her, and then I look at my husband and go, "Baby." At that point, the process in my head was, that was what caused that 42-hour labor. That was what was inside throughout the 10 months prior to the labor. And that was it. I checked out. After that, it was not about the baby anymore. I was just focusing on pushing out the next thing, which was the placenta. And that took another 15 minutes. So she took about 2 hours to come. So from the first push until she actually came out, that took me 2 hours. And then another 15 minutes for the placenta. And then, and mind you, there were no complications. This was a natural birth, no problems whatsoever. And so 15 minutes, the placenta, and then came the stitching because I had pushed very hard. I didn't know how to push according to the nurses, and I pushed wrongly, and I had internal tears that required stitching, and that took another hour and a half. At that point, I was through. I was just numb from all the pain and the exhaustion, and the baby only was given to me in my hands about 2 hours after her birth. So the first person who was checking in on her and taking pictures and holding her and caressing her was my husband. And no, he didn't cry either. So when I first actually held my newborn of 2 hours, the only thing I kept thinking was that she was so tiny, because prior to that, I don't think I had ever carried a newborn within like the first few hours of his or her life. So to me, oh, she's so tiny. And that's it. I did not cry. I did not feel, but I mean, I kissed her once, but it wasn't like this urgency, like, oh, my baby, my baby. It wasn't like that. And a few days after, when I was completely like, okay, I've had my sleep, I'm not that exhausted anymore, it took me a few days to recover, I remembered thinking if there was something wrong with me because I didn't react the way I thought I was supposed to react. I felt mom guilt for the first time hitting me fully in the face, because I thought that I should have emotionally connected with her the second she came out. So that was it. That was my moment. And you know what? Now, that doesn't make me a bad mom. I'm a great mom. My kids love me. And because I did not connect with her at the very first moment, that doesn't do anything to my relationship with her or how I feel about her now. I physically, emotionally, mentally, psychologically needed a little bit of time to recenter myself, to actually get back into the experience, because the whole experience of labor was so intense that I sort of wasn't really in my senses. I wasn't really in my head. I don't know where I was. I was just reduced to a point where I was trying to manage the physical things that were happening. For many of us, the bond is a slow burn. It takes you a while to get used to the fact that this is your baby. Sometimes it is not the instantaneous connection that you are supposed to have as portrayed by other people. I mean, it's great if it happens to you, but if it doesn't, then don't beat yourself up about it, because that's your experience. That's motherhood for you, and that doesn't make you a bad mother. There is a strange cultural whisper, almost, that tells us that motherhood is supposed to be sacred. The postpartum period is supposed to be almost a meditative experience. It's supposed to be blissful, and those are your first foundational steps to the perfect motherhood. Sometimes it can be, but for most mothers, it is also harrowing, terrifying, intense, and not as healing as it should be. See, I'm a victim of expectations too. What is postpartum? Postpartum, or sometimes it's referred to as the fourth trimester, is supposed to be a time when your body heals. It can take a while. Scientifically, officially, it's supposed to be the first year after the baby comes, and postpartum is the period of rest and recovery for the mother. But here's where expectations throw everything out of the window. Everyone focuses on the baby. Everyone who comes to visit you comes to hold the baby. No one asks you if, oh, well, okay, some people might ask you, how are you doing, yada, yada. No one really talks to the mother. No one buys gifts for the mother. No one sits down and holds the mother's hand. Everybody just wants to carry the cute little sweet baby. And in the middle of all of that, you get this one piece of advice that floats through the air. Enjoy every moment. Excuse me? You are sleep deprived. Your hormones are free falling. You're bleeding for 40 days after the baby comes. For some shorter, for some longer. Which part of this is supposed to be enjoyable? Yes, the baby, yes, I know that, I understand that, but it's very easy for people on the outside to say things, and then it just makes you feel like, okay, so if I'm not enjoying the moment, am I doing something wrong? It always comes down to that. Actually, you know what? Comment down below the video if there is something that you were expected to feel as a new mother and you couldn't, and then your mom guilt just comes up, creeps up behind you and just goes, am I doing something wrong? We're doing something wrong, aren't we? Please let me know, because that just makes things normal for everyone else. No one talks about the quiet shame of not loving every second, of missing your old self, which is a huge thing that we will probably talk about in another video, of just wanting to sleep. It's shame to just want to sleep, to just want to put the baby aside and just focus on yourself for a second. That is what expectations do. More often than not, these expectations we place on ourselves are a result of the society setting standards. And when you place those expectations on yourself, it is an extension of your fear that someone might be judging you based on their expectations. Think about that for a second. I think this is very true. You judge yourself before someone else comes in and says it. I remember crying because I thought that I would not be a good mother because I couldn't control my nausea and vomiting when I was pregnant. I don't really understand why I felt that way, but I did. I remember that at some point I felt like maybe I'm not prepared for this. Maybe if the baby comes, I'm not going to be able to handle it, and that's not fair to the baby. I remembered blaming myself for a lot of things that happened, which later on I realized are supposed to be normal. That's the problem. People don't talk about these things, and then they don't get normalized, and then when they actually happen, you start wondering if it's your fault. So if I can't breastfeed for whatever reason, maybe I don't want to, does that make me a bad mom? If I give formula, if I co-sleep, if I train the baby to sleep independently, is that going to affect my relationship with the baby or the health of the baby? Are these things just stuff that have been sowed in our heads? They're not true. They're not things that are going to come up in future. Your child is not going to remember the brand of diapers that you got for him or her 20, 30 years down the road and go, Mom, you're such a bad mother because you didn't get me this brand of diapers. Mom, you're such a bad mother because you screamed into the pillow once because I wouldn't shut up and because you were exhausted. Frankly, that's not going to happen. Like I said, motherhood is not a test. You're not preparing for it. It's not a competition. You don't expect things to go a certain way because you're trying to compare yourself with someone else. That's not how it works. And if that's what you're feeling right now, please listen and take this in, because everyone has gone through problems like this before. It's just that motherhood is an experience that is different from one mother to the other. Speaking of judgments, I even have heard of people saying, you should be lucky that you have a child. And so do this thing correctly. Do it right. Because you should be lucky that you have a child. How does that make you feel? At the end of the day, what your children are going to remember is love. And love is imperfect. One of the hardest things to admit is this: that you feel empty sometimes. Because everything around you is supposed to make you feel full. Your life is complete. You have a baby. You have a family now. You're living the dream. But what if your cup is drained? You've poured everything out: milk, energy, time, yourself, your identity sometimes, and you forgot to refill. Or maybe you didn't have the time to refill. And no one told you that drained and fulfilled could live in the same heart. This episode, it's not about complaining. It's about normalizing. And if you have ever felt guilt for any of the things that we've talked about, then please know that you're not alone. I think that's the gist of this couch. Everyone here, we're all here together, holding hands in silence and prayer, because we know that we're not alone. Just because we can't see each other doesn't mean that we have to go through this all on our own. If anything, just know that I'm here to hold your hand through the things that you're going through right now. And if no one has told you yet, you're a great mom. You're doing great. You're doing a great job. Don't let anything make you feel like you're less than what you are. Thank you for resting here with me. If this episode brought you any comfort, share it with someone who might need it too. Subscribe for more. New episodes every Sunday. And until then, stay soft, stay strong, and come back whenever you need to. Goodbye.